And where do you start with this trauma that is often repressed, or we're not aware of it anyways?
Okay, so let's take one particular illness. Okay, take for example multiple sclerosis. Okay.
Nice, very, very good example. Autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
Very, very good example.
Now, in 1870, there was a French neurologist called Jean Martin Charcot, who was the first one to describe multiple sclerosis. And he said that it was a stress-driven disease in 1870. Okay. Now, since then, there's been all kinds of research. And he said that it's caused by long continued grief and vexation. In other words, stress, okay? This is what Jean-Martin Charcot said. Since then, there's been all kinds of studies showing the relationship between childhood trauma and long-term stress and multiple sclerosis. So that it's no longer just an insight on the part of a brilliant neurologist, Charcot. It's actually been scientifically proven. Nevertheless, so for example, MS patients have more unwanted stress or traumatic events occurring between 6 months to 2 years before the onset. But I'm quoting from my newest book, The Myth of Normal, which is also going to be published in Greece.
Of course, yes.
More histories of childhood trauma. If there's physical or sexual abuse, they're much more likely to have relapses. These people are less in touch with their emotions. This is what the research shows. Okay, now, what I found with multiple sclerosis patients and also ALS patients is they tend to be very, very nice people. In fact, if you ask neurologists, and this has been studied, what do you think of your ALS patients? They all say they're extraordinarily nice. What the neurologists don't do is they don't see the relationship between the disease and the niceness, but they see the niceness. I once went to talk to a group of people with multiple sclerosis. This is before I wrote When the Body Says No. I hadn't done the research yet. I just had these ideas. But this group, they asked me to talk to them. This is a group of self-support for MS patients. And I said to them, look, I'm very sorry. I might be completely wrong. Tell me if I am, but here's what I think. And I told them, I think people who suppress their anger, who are very, very nice, always looking after the emotional needs of others, they don't know how to say no. They're the ones who get multiple sclerosis. And they all said, you just told the story of our lives.
Okay.
And there were 25 people there, or 24, 20 of them volunteered to be interviewed for the When the Body Says No. That's why the second chapter of the book is on multiple sclerosis. Okay,
right.
Now, there was one story I want to tell you. There's a woman there who said, I don't know how to say no. I said, great, give me $100 right now. She said, oh, well, I don't have $100. I said, not a problem. There's a bank right outside the building. We'll go down to the bank. You get your $100 and you give it to me. She said, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I said, look, I'm just trying to get you to say no to a ridiculous demand from a complete stranger to whom you know nothing whatsoever. She said, I can't say no.
Right.
And by the way, have you ever met a one-day-old baby that didn't know how to say no? or
exactly.
So in other words, the inability to say no is nobody's genuine true self. It's a coping mechanism they develop. But when you don't say no, like let's say, do you live in Athens or where do you live?
Yes, exactly. I do live in Athens.
Okay, I come to Athens and I call you up and Agnes, can we go for coffee?
Yeah.
But you have just been up all night looking at a sick friend or a family member, or you're tired, you're stressed, you don't feel like going for coffee. But you don't know how to say no.
Exactly.
Because you're afraid to disappoint me. Okay. So we go for coffee. What is the impact on you? What's the impact on you?
In my case, it would be, I would try to convince myself that it's the right thing to do so that I start feeling good about saying yes, when in actuality, I wanted to say no.
What's the impact on your body?
A lot of tension.
A lot of tension, fatigue?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Now, what if you did that every day of your life? Because you didn't know how to say no.
That would be quite disastrous.
That's where the illness comes from.
Okay. May I ask you my next question on this?
Yeah.
In your book, you have written extensively about people pleasing and perfectionism, which is very much related to what you're describing right now. The very good people that end up with autoimmune diseases, for example.
Yeah.
And my question is this. I very often find people who tell me, I mean, so often, I cannot set boundaries. I cannot say no. I am a perfectionist. Everything has to be perfect. And it seems like they feel an existential terror if they step out of this pattern. It's like, I'm not a good person. I'm not worthy at all if I say no. I'm not worthy if I stand my ground. And I'm not worthy if I have my own needs come on top of the needs of others.
Yes.
So how do you tackle this, Dr. Matè?
Well, first of all, the existential threat is completely valid.
Okay.
In their experience. So let me give you another analogy, okay? What if I came to Athens and I had a gun? I'm sorry for this example, but it's not going to happen. I don't have a gun. Don't worry about it. But if I came to Athens and I had a gun and I said, Agnes, have coffee with me or I'll shoot you, what would you do?
Well, I would definitely be a bitch, which is something I never am.
If I had a gun?
I would run away for sure.
No, you can't run away. I got a gun, I would shoot you.
Okay.
If I had a gun and I would shoot you if you don't come for coffee, what would you do?
If you have a gun and you're threatening my life, I will do what you say.
Exactly.
I will yield to every demand.
Exactly. And saying no would be an existential threat.
Okay.
Not
kind of an existential threat. I see.
Yeah. Not pleasing me would be an existential threat because your very existence would be threatened.
I get it.
Now, these people, they were not born not knowing how to say no. As we said earlier, every one-day-old baby knows how to say no. Try and feed them something they don't want to eat. You know, you get to know right away. As a matter of fact, around 1.5, at least in my experience, what's the word that kids start saying all the time? It's no. You know, time for dinner, no. Time for put your shoes on, no. Now, why is that? Why don't they say yes first? The reason they don't say yes first is because if you don't know how to say no, your yeses don't mean anything.
Okay.
So that, you know, if I ask you,
I get it. That makes total sense.
So everybody's born knowing how to say no. That's how we develop. But then something happens, an existential threat. And the existential threat is if you say no to your parents, they don't love you, they don't like you, they don't approve of you, they punish you, they threaten you, they reject you. Then the no becomes an existential threat. Then setting up boundaries become an existential threat. Because to the little child, the parents' anger and the parents' rejection is an existential threat. It's like having a gun on them, okay? So they learn very early that setting a boundary and not pleasing other people is an existential threat. The problem is, once this is wired into their nervous system, they keep behaving like that all their lives. Now, how do you deal with it? Well, first of all, usually what happens is that people suffer. Something happens, they get sick, or they get depressed, or something wakes them up that the way I'm living my life. So there's some kind of a suffering that wakes us up, you know, and how you deal with it is you have to learn that what you learned as a child, it was an existential threat then, but it isn't anymore. If I come to Athens and ask you for coffee, and if I don't have a gun, then it's not an existential threat for you to say no. But you have to learn that because your nervous system still believes that it is from childhood. So it's a question of unlearning what you learned as a child, undoing the trauma, in other words. That's what it's about.